There is a moment in life when silence changes a person, not the peaceful silence of wisdom. The painful silence of being overlooked, being dismissed, being forgotten by people she once trusted. At first, it hurt her deeply. She questioned her worth. She searched for approval in places that were already empty. Yuka. She waited for understanding from people who could not even understand themselves. But suffering has a strange power. If the mind remains awake, pain becomes a teacher, and one day she stopped asking, why do they ignore me? Instead, she asked, what is life trying to teach me through this? That question changed everything. Shuki A. She began to understand that attention is not love, noise is not respect. And people who constantly overlook your value are often disconnected from their own spirit. Silence can become your greatest teacher. Most people are afraid of silence because silence removes distraction. It removes noise, it removes escape. And when there is nothing left to entertain the mind, the human being is finally forced to meet the truth within. This is why many people keep themselves constantly busy, always talking, always scrolling, always searching for attention, validation, or temporary pleasure. Because the moment silence appears, unresolved emotions begin to speak. Pain begins to rise, memories return, doubts become louder. For a long time, she also feared silence. After being ignored, she wanted answers from the world. She wanted someone to explain why her loyalty was not appreciated, why her kindness was overlooked, why her presence suddenly became invisible to people she once cared about deeply. But no answer came, and this is where life becomes a powerful teacher. Because sometimes the absence of answers is the answer itself. At first, silence felt heavy to her. The empty room felt unbearable, the late nights felt endless. Even her own thoughts became difficult to face. But slowly something changed. Instead of running from silence, she remained still. Instead of escaping discomfort, she observed it. And for the first time, she started hearing things she had ignored for years. She realized how often she abandoned herself just to keep others comfortable. How often she said yes when her spirit wanted to say no. How often she sacrificed her peace trying to avoid rejection. Silence revealed these truths without emotion, without judgment, without cruelty. Because silence does not attack the human being, it reveals the human being. This is why wise people spend time alone, not because they hate the world, but because they understand that clarity cannot grow in constant noise. A disturbed lake cannot reflect the moon clearly. In the same way, a restless mind cannot see life clearly. Silence calmed her inner storm. She began waking up earlier, sitting quietly before the world became loud, breathing deeply, observing her thoughts instead of becoming controlled by them. And she noticed something important. Most suffering was not coming from the situation itself. It was coming from attachment, attachment to expectations, attachment to people, attachment to how life should have been. The moment she understood this, her heart became lighter. She no longer needed everyone to understand her. She no longer needed constant reassurance. She no longer needed to explain her value to people committed to misunderstanding her. Silence taught her emotional discipline. Before, every opinion affected her mood. Every rejection damaged her confidence. Every cold response created overthinking. But silence trained her to pause before reacting, to observe before speaking, to protect her energy instead of wasting it on meaningless battles. And this changed her completely. Because a person who controls their emotions becomes powerful, not powerful through aggression, powerful through awareness. Most people are controlled by impulse. Anger controls them, fear controls them, attention controls them. But silence creates space between emotion and reaction, and inside that space, wisdom is born. She also discovered that loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. Loneliness is when the human being feels incomplete without others. Solitude is when the human being discovers peace within themselves. This understanding transformed her life. Now being alone no longer frightened her. She could walk alone without feeling abandoned, sit alone without feeling unwanted, work on herself without needing applause from the world. And strangely, the less she chased attention, the more her presence began to grow, because people can feel inner peace. They can feel grounded energy. They can feel when someone is no longer desperate for approval. Silence gave her that presence, not loud confidence, not fake perfection, real presence, the kind that enters a room calmly, speaks carefully, observes deeply, and never needs to prove anything. Many people believe strength is found in speaking louder than everyone else, but true strength often appears quietly. The mountain does not announce its power, the ocean does not beg for attention, and the sun does not fight to be seen. They simply exist fully in their nature. That is what silence taught her: to stop forcing, to stop chasing, to stop exhausting herself trying to control everything around her. Instead, she learned to master herself. And this is one of the greatest victories in life, because the human being who conquers their own mind becomes free from many forms of suffering. Silence was no longer empty to her, it became sacred, a place of healing, a place of reflection, a place where she rebuilt herself piece by piece. And through that silence, she became stronger than the version of herself that once begged the world to notice her. Pain transforms the disciplined mind. This is something most people understand too late. Every human being experiences pain. No one escapes it. Loss arrives, disappointment arrives, rejection arrives. Sometimes life removes everything that once made a person feel secure. But pain itself is not what defines the future. What defines the future is the response to pain. One person becomes bitter, another becomes wiser. One person allows suffering to destroy their spirit, another uses suffering to awaken their spirit. When she was ignored, the pain was real. It touched her deeply because she gave her heart sincerely. She cared honestly. She remained loyal even when others became distant. And when that loyalty was not valued, her heart became heavy. There were nights when her thoughts became her greatest enemy. She replayed conversations in her mind, questioned her worth, wondered what she lacked. This is what emotional pain does when the mind is undisciplined. It creates chaos inside the human being. The mind begins to imagine things that are not true. The heart becomes attached to suffering, and slowly the person loses connection with inner peace. But one day she understood something important. Pecan can either become poison or power. The difference is discipline. Without discipline, pain turns into self-destruction. People escape into anger, addiction, complaining, blaming others for every wound in their life. But discipline changes suffering into growth. Instead of collapsing, she started training herself, not only physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. When sadness appeared, she stopped feeding it with endless overthinking. When loneliness appeared, she stopped begging others to fill the emptiness. When rejection appeared, she stopped seeing it as proof of weakness. She began asking herself every day, what can this pain teach me? That question changed her direction completely. Because pain is a mirror. It reveals attachment. It reveals insecurity. It reveals the places within the human being that still need healing. Most people spend their lives avoiding discomfort. But growth has never lived inside comfort. The body becomes stronger through resistance. The mind becomes sharper through challenge. And the spirit becomes deeper through suffering. She started creating discipline in small ways, waking up even when motivation disappeared, protecting her routines even when emotions felt heavy, remaining calm even when her heart wanted to react. This is true strength. Anyone can act powerful when life feels easy. But the real character of a human being appears during difficult moments. Pain tested her patience, tested her self-respect, and slowly she stopped becoming controlled by temporary feelings. Before, one message could change her mood. One opinion could destroy her confidence. One rejection could weaken her spirit for days. But discipline created stability within her. Compo 4. She learned that emotions are temporary visitors. They come and go like weather. But if the human being reacts to every emotional storm, life becomes unstable. So she trained herself to remain centered. Not cold, not emotionless, aware there is a difference. A disciplined mind still feels pain deeply. But it does not become enslaved by pain, she cried, when necessary, reflected when necessary, rested when necessary. But she never allowed suffering to become her identity. This is where many people become trapped. They repeat their wounds so often that pain becomes their personality. They introduce themselves through suffering, through betrayal, through disappointment. But healing begins when the human being stops worshiping the wound. And she understood this. So instead of asking life for easier circumstances, she started building a stronger mind. Every difficult moment became training. When people ignored her, she practiced self-respect. When life became uncertain, she practiced patience. When emotions became intense, she practiced stillness. And slowly pain stopped feeling like punishment. It became preparation. Preparation for wisdom, preparation for maturity, preparation for a deeper understanding of life. She realized that some of the strongest people are not those who avoided suffering. They are the ones who walked through suffering consciously. The fire that melts weak metal also strengthens steel. And pain works the same way. If the mind remains unconscious, suffering destroys the person. But if the mind becomes disciplined, suffering refines the person. Now, when challenges appear, she no longer immediately panics. Because she understands that discomfort is part of growth. The seed must break before the tree can rise. The muscle must tear before it becomes stronger, and the human spirit must sometimes suffer before it awakens fully. This understanding gave her calmness. She no longer feared difficult seasons, because she discovered that pain carries hidden wisdom for those willing to learn. And through discipline, her suffering became strength instead of weakness. Stop chasing people who ignore your worth. This lesson alone can save years of emotional suffering. Many people lose themselves not because they are weak, but because they are constantly trying to earn love from those who cannot truly value them. They chase attention, chase validation, chase acceptance, and slowly, while trying to hold on to others, they let go of themselves. Chase. She once lived this way too. When people became distant, she tried harder. When conversations became cold, she gave more energy. When she felt ignored, she blamed herself instead of recognizing the truth. She believed that if she loved deeply enough, cared sincerely enough, sacrificed enough, eventually people would understand her value. But life does not work this way. You cannot force someone to appreciate what they are emotionally blind to. And this realization was painful for her at first, because the heart naturally wants connection, it wants closeness. It wants to feel chosen, but attachment can become dangerous when it destroys self-respect. This is why many people remain trapped in unhealthy relationships, unhealthy friendships, and unhealthy environments. Not because they feel fulfilled there, but because they fear being alone. Fear makes the human being tolerate what the spirit already knows is wrong. So she kept chasing, sending messages that received dry replies, giving energy that was never returned, making excuses for people who repeatedly showed indifference. And every time she abandoned her dignity for temporary attention, her inner peace became weaker. One day she finally became tired, not tired of people, tired of betraying herself. That moment changed her life. Because true transformation begins when the human being becomes honest with themselves. She asked herself, why am I fighting so hard to stay where I am not valued? And deep inside, she discovered the answer. She was afraid that letting go meant losing love. But what she later understood was this: real love never requires the destruction of self-respect. Real connection does not leave a person constantly confused, drained, and emotionally starving. And people who truly value you do not make you beg for basic respect. This understanding awakened something powerful within her. She stopped chasing, not from anger, not from ego, from awareness. She understood that constantly seeking validation from others is a form of inner emptiness. And no amount of external attention can heal a person disconnected from themselves. So instead of obsessing over who ignored her, she turned her energy inward. She started rebuilding her relationship with herself. Now, She spent more time improving her mind instead of overthinking other people's behavior. More time protecting her peace instead of chasing explanations, more time growing instead of begging to be noticed. And slowly her energy changed. Because the moment a human being stops chasing approval, they begin walking with quiet strength. There is dignity in detachment, not cold detachment, wise detachment. The understanding that not every person deserves unlimited access to your energy. Many people confuse attachment with love. But attachment often comes from fear, fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of loneliness. Love is different. Love is calm, love is free. Love does not force itself where it is unwelcome. A flower does not chase the bee, it simply blooms fully in its nature. And this is exactly what she learned to do. She stopped shrinking herself to fit into places that could never honor her spirit. Cox stopped explaining her value to people committed to misunderstanding her. Stopped exhausting her heart trying to awaken emotions in those emotionally unavailable, because wisdom taught her something important. The more you chase, the more you suffer. Why? Because chasing places your happiness in the hands of others. Their attention controls your mood, their responses control your peace, their approval controls your confidence, and this is emotional slavery. A free spirit does not live this way. She realized that rejection is not always a sign of lack. Sometimes it is protection, sometimes life removes people because they no longer align with your growth. Sometimes distance is necessary for awakening, and instead of resisting this truth, she accepted it. Acceptance gave her freedom. Now, when someone failed to value her presence, she no longer collapsed emotionally. She no longer begged to stay connected. She no longer chased people who walked away carelessly. She simply observed their actions calmly and moved forward with dignity. Now, this does not mean her heart became hard. It became wiser. She still loved deeply, still cared sincerely, still remained compassionate, but she finally understood the importance of protecting her energy. Because energy is life, and every moment spent chasing those who ignore your worth is a moment stolen from your own growth. There are people destroying their confidence daily, trying to convince others to see their value. But value does not increase through begging. Gold remains gold even when unrecognized by the blind. And the human being must remember this. Your worth is not measured by who stays, who leaves, or who fails to appreciate you. Your worth already exists within you. The moment she understood this deeply, her entire presence changed. She stopped needing attention to feel complete, and in that moment she became truly powerful. Inner peace is greater than attention. Most people spend their entire lives chasing attention without realizing the cost. They want to be noticed, praised, validated, accepted by everyone around them. And because of this, they constantly adjust themselves to fit the expectations of others. They hide their true feelings, suppress their authentic nature, pretend to be stronger, happier, or more perfect than they truly are. But the deeper tragedy is this. While chasing attention from the outside world, they lose connection with the peace inside themselves. She once lived this way too. After being ignored, a part of her desperately wanted to prove her worth. She wanted people to regret overlooking her. She wanted recognition. She wanted to feel seen again. And for a while, her mind became trapped in that desire. Every action secretly carried the hope of being noticed. Every improvement carried the hidden expectation of approval. Even her silence was sometimes an attempt to make others react. But the problem with seeking attention is that it never truly satisfies the spirit. Attention is temporary. And one moment people praise you, the next moment they forget you. Human attention changes like the wind. It is unstable, unpredictable, and dangerous to depend on emotionally. This is why people who build their happiness on validation suffer constantly. Their peace depends on reactions, their confidence depends on opinions, their emotional state depends on how others treat them. And this creates a fragile life. One day, she became exhausted from this emotional cycle, exhausted from overthinking, exhausted from caring too much about how she appeared in the eyes of others, exhausted from giving people the power to disturb her peace so easily. And in that exhaustion, something awakened inside her. She realized that peace is more valuable than attention because attention feeds the ego, but peace nourishes the soul. That realization changed the direction of her life completely. Instead of asking, how do I make people notice me? She began asking, how do I protect my inner peace? This question made her wiser. She started spending less time trying to impress people and more time understanding herself. She became careful about the energy she allowed into her life, careful about conversations, careful about environments, careful about emotional attachments that created chaos within her because she understood something many people never learn. Not everything deserves access to your mind. The world is full of noise, arguments, competition, comparison, endless pressure to prove something. But a peaceful mind does not participate in every battle. This does not mean weakness. It means maturity. There is great strength in remaining calm while the world constantly demands emotional reactions from you. Before, every criticism affected her deeply. Every rejection disturbed her sleep. Every cold behavior made her question herself. But now she started observing life differently. She realized that many people project their own pain onto others. Their disrespect often reflects their inner emptiness, not your value. Their inability to appreciate you often reveals their lack of awareness, not your lack of worth. This understanding protected her heart. Instead of carrying anger everywhere, she learned detachment. Instead of reacting emotionally to every disappointment, she practiced stillness. Instead of forcing people to understand her, she accepted that not everyone has the capacity to see deeply. And slowly, her nervous system became calmer, her thoughts became clearer, her energy became lighter. Peace entered her life not because life became perfect, but because she stopped fighting unnecessary battles inside herself. This is important to understand. Inner peace does not mean the absence of difficulty. It means the ability to remain centered despite difficulty. The ocean can still have deep calmness beneath powerful waves. And the human spirit can develop the same depth. She no longer felt the need to respond to everything, no longer needed to explain herself endlessly, no longer needed to win every argument or seek revenge against those who hurt her, because protecting peace became more important than protecting pride. Many people destroy their own mental health, trying to maintain an image, trying to look successful, trying to appear important, trying to gain approval from people who are equally lost inside themselves. But peace cannot grow where there is constant performance. Peace only grows where there is honesty. So she became honest with herself, honest about what drained her energy, honest about what relationships disturbed her spirit, honest about the habits that created emotional chaos within her mind. And once she became aware, she stopped tolerating what destroyed her inner balance. This is why her energy changed so much. People noticed she became quieter, but stronger, softer, but wiser, calmer, but more powerful, because true power is not loud. True power is stable. Anyone can create noise. Few people can create peace within themselves. And the human being who protects their inner peace becomes difficult to control. Why? Because manipulation loses power over a peaceful mind. Drama loses attraction, attention loses importance, and fear loses control. Now she no longer needed the world to constantly confirm her value. Her peace became her confirmation, and that peace made her stronger than attention ever could. Discipline creates unstoppable energy, not motivation, not emotion, not temporary excitement. Discipline. Many people wait to feel inspired before they take action. They wait for the perfect mood, the perfect moment, the perfect emotional state. But life does not reward those who only move when they feel comfortable. Life rewards consistency, and this is what she finally understood after being ignored. At first, the pain drained her energy completely. Her mind became heavy, her heart felt tired. Even simple tasks became difficult, because emotional suffering consumes the human spirit when it is left uncontrolled. Some mornings she did not feel like getting out of bed. Some nights her thoughts kept repeating painful memories. The disappointment sat deeply inside her chest like a silent weight. But eventually, she realized something important. If she continued allowing emotions to control her actions, her entire life would become unstable. Because emotions constantly change. One day confidence appears, the next day doubt appears, one day hope feels strong, the next day exhaustion takes over. A person who depends only on feelings will always struggle with consistency. So instead of asking herself, how do I feel today? She began asking, what must be done regardless of how I feel? That question became the beginning of her transformation. She stopped waiting for motivation, stopped waiting for emotional certainty, stopped waiting for the world to become easier. And she started building discipline through small daily actions, waking up earlier, taking care of her body, protecting her routines, training her mind to focus instead of constantly overthinking. At first, it was difficult, very difficult, because the mind naturally seeks comfort. It wants distraction, it wants excuses. It wants immediate pleasure instead of long-term growth. But discipline teaches the human being how to act beyond comfort. Every time she honored her routine despite emotional pain, she became stronger. Every time she remained focused despite inner chaos, she built resilience. Every time she chose growth over excuses, her confidence deepened naturally, and slowly something powerful happened. Her energy returned. Not emotional energy that disappears quickly, grounded energy, stable energy, the kind of energy that comes from self-respect, because discipline creates trust within the human being. When you constantly break promises to yourself, the mind becomes weak. But when you consistently honor your commitments, even small ones, the spirit becomes stronger. She began trusting herself again. If she promised herself peace, she protected it. If she promised herself growth, she worked for it. If she promised herself healing, she stopped returning to what destroyed her. This created inner power. Most people underestimate the connection between discipline and emotional healing. But discipline is healing. Why? Why? Because discipline creates structure during emotional chaos. It prevents the human being from drowning in temporary feelings. It gives direction when the mind feels lost. Without discipline, pain spreads everywhere. Sleep becomes unstable, thoughts become uncontrolled, habits become destructive, but discipline restores order. She noticed this clearly in her own life. The more disciplined she became, the less power sadness had over her. Not because pain disappeared instantly, but because her life was no longer centered around suffering. She had purpose again. Movement again, direction again, and purpose gives energy to the human spirit. Many people feel exhausted not only because life is difficult, but because they lack direction. Their energy leaks into distractions, emotional drama, unhealthy attachments, and endless overthinking. But discipline gathers scattered energy and focuses it. Like sunlight passing through a magnifying glass, focused energy becomes powerful. This is why disciplined people often appear calm yet unstoppable. They are not wasting energy trying to impress everyone. Not wasting energy complaining constantly. Not wasting energy chasing temporary emotional highs. Their energy moves toward growth. She also learned that discipline is not punishment. Many people misunderstand this. Discipline is self-respect in action. It is choosing what strengthens your future instead of what weakens your present momentarily. When she exercised despite emotional heaviness, that was self-respect. When she avoided unhealthy conversations, that was self-respect. When she protected her peace instead of reacting impulsively, that was self-respect. Discipline slowly purified her life. Her mind became sharper because she consumed less negativity. Her body became stronger because she cared for it consistently. Her emotions became calmer because she stopped feeding chaos daily. And the most beautiful part was this. She no longer needed external validation to feel powerful. Discipline created internal confidence. Not fake confidence based on appearance or praise, real confidence based on evidence. Evidence that she could rely on herself. Evidence that she could survive difficult seasons without collapsing. evidence that she could continue moving forward even when life became uncomfortable. This made her unstoppable. Because an unstoppable person is not someone who never feels pain. It is someone who continues despite pain. Most people quit when emotions become difficult. Disciplined people continue with awareness and patience. The mountain is not built in one day. The ocean is not filled by one wave. And a strong spirit is not created through comfort alone. Day by day, action by action, she rebuilt herself through discipline. And eventually, the same pain that once weakened her became the force that awakened her strength. True confidence moves quietly. It does not beg for attention. It does not compete constantly. It does not feel the need to prove its value to every person in the room. Most people misunderstand confidence because they confuse it with performance. They think confidence is loud speech, showing superiority, always being seen, always being admired, but often what appears loud on the outside is deeply insecure on the inside. A person desperate to prove their importance is usually fighting hidden self-doubt. And she understood this only after life humbled her through silence and rejection. Before, being ignored affected her deeply because part of her confidence depended on how others responded to her. If people appreciated her, she felt valuable. If people became distant, she questioned herself. This is not true confidence. This is emotional dependence disguised as confidence, and many people live this way without realizing it. Their mood changes according to opinions, their self-worth rises and falls according to attention. Their identity becomes controlled by external reactions. But when she was forced into solitude, she slowly discovered a deeper form of confidence, a quieter confidence, a grounded confidence, the kind that grows internally instead of externally. At first, silence felt uncomfortable because there was no constant reassurance anymore. No praise, no emotional validation, no one constantly reminding her of her value. And this exposed something important. She had spent too much time seeking confidence from the outside world instead of building it within herself. So she began rebuilding from the inside, not through pretending, not through arrogance, through self-awareness. She started paying attention to her habits, her thoughts, her emotional patterns, her fears. And she realized that true confidence is not the absence of insecurity. It is the ability to remain stable despite insecurity. This changed the way she carried herself completely. Before, she felt the need to explain herself constantly, to defend every choice, to seek understanding from everyone around her. But now she became calmer. She understood that people will misunderstand you no matter how clearly you speak sometimes. And trying to control every opinion is emotional exhaustion. So she stopped over-explaining, not because she became cold, because she became secure. You can out. Secure people do not feel the need to win every argument. They do not need constant recognition to feel important. They do not collapse when others fail to appreciate them. Why? Because their value no longer depends on public approval. This is why true confidence often appears silent. It walks calmly, speaks carefully, observes deeply, and remains emotionally balanced even when surrounded by noise. She also noticed something else. People with real confidence are usually respectful. Not because they are weak, but because they are not threatened by the success or presence of others. Insecure people compete constantly, compare constantly, seek superiority constantly. But confident people understand that life is not a race against everyone else. A flower does not compete with another flower. Each blooms in its own season. This understanding brought peace into her heart. She stopped comparing her journey to others, stopped feeling rushed by social pressure, stopped feeling smaller when someone else succeeded, because confidence rooted in comparison is unstable. There will always be someone richer, more attractive, more recognized, more praised by society. If confidence depends on being better than others, the human being will suffer endlessly. But confidence rooted in self-awareness is different. It comes from knowing your values, knowing your intentions, knowing who you are even when nobody applauds you, and this kind of confidence cannot easily be shaken. She also learned that true confidence accepts imperfection. Before she tried too hard to appear flawless, she feared mistakes, feared judgment, feared rejection, but eventually life taught her that perfection is impossible. Every human being carries weaknesses. Every human being struggles internally. Every human being experiences moments of doubt. The confident person is not the one who hides this reality. It is the one who accepts it without losing self-respect. This acceptance made her lighter emotionally. Now she no longer needed to wear masks to feel worthy, no longer needed to perform constantly for approval, no longer needed to seek attention to feel visible. Her energy became natural, authentic, steady, and people could feel the difference because authenticity carries quiet power. Okay? There is something deeply strong about a person who remains true to themselves in a world full of performance. The mountain does not announce its height every day. The ocean does not shout about its depth. And wisdom does not need constant attention to exist. Real confidence works the same way. It is peaceful, patient, grounded. It allows the human being to walk away from disrespect without begging to stay, to remain calm during criticism, to continue growing without needing public validation for every step. This is why she became stronger after being ignored, because silence forced her to stop searching for confidence in temporary places. And once she discovered confidence within herself, the opinions of others lost their power to control her spirit. Self-respect changes everything. Okay. The moment a human being truly develops self-respect, life begins to transform from the inside out. Not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because the person no longer accepts what destroys their spirit. Before she learned this lesson, she tolerated many things that silently wounded her: disrespectful behavior, empty connections, one-sided effort, situations where her kindness was used but never valued. And like many people, she kept telling herself to be patient and to keep understanding others, to keep giving more chances. But deep inside, her soul was becoming tired. Because there is a dangerous difference between kindness and self-abandonment. Many people believe enduring everything makes them loving. But constantly betraying your own peace to keep others comfortable is not love. It is a lack of self-respect. She did not understand this at first. When people ignored her, she tried harder. When they became distant, she became more available. When they failed to value her presence, she lowered her standards just to maintain connection. And every time she accepted less than what her spirit deserved, something inside her weakened. This is what happens when self-respect disappears. The human being slowly loses inner strength because the mind is always watching how you treat yourself. If you continuously tolerate disrespect, neglect your boundaries, and abandon your own needs for temporary approval, the mind begins to believe you are unworthy of better treatment. And this creates suffering that becomes invisible from the outside but heavy within. One day, she finally became honest with herself. She realized the pain was not only coming from how others treated her. Part of the pain came from how she allowed herself to be treated. That realization was difficult but necessary because healing begins with responsibility, not responsibility for other people's behavior. Responsibility for your own boundaries, your own choices, your own standards. And from that moment, she began rebuilding self-respect slowly, not through anger, not through arrogance. Through awareness, she started paying attention to what drained her emotionally, who constantly disturbed her peace, which relationships left her feeling empty instead of valued. And for the first time, she stopped ignoring the voice within herself. That quiet inner voice had been warning her for a long time. But loneliness made her tolerate things she should have walked away from earlier. This happens to many people. Fear of losing connection becomes stronger than love for oneself, so they remain in environments that damage their spirit. They continue explaining themselves to people committed to misunderstanding them, continue giving chances to those who repeatedly disrespect their energy. But self-respect changes this completely, Because a person with self-respect understands something powerful. Okay, not everyone deserves unlimited access to your heart. This does not mean becoming cold or hateful. It means becoming conscious. Conscious about what you allow into your life, conscious about who influences your emotional state, conscious about protecting your peace, your energy, and your dignity. She began setting boundaries without guilt. If something disturbed her peace repeatedly, she stepped away. If someone constantly disrespected her, she stopped chasing their approval. If a relationship required her to shrink herself emotionally, she no longer remained there. At first, this felt uncomfortable because people who lack self-respect often fear disappointing others. They fear being called selfish. They fear rejection. But eventually, she understood this truth. Every time you betray yourself to avoid losing others, you lose a part of your inner peace. And inner peace is too valuable to sacrifice endlessly. Self-respect taught her how to walk away calmly. Before she stayed too long in situations that clearly damaged her spirit, she hoped people would change. Hope can become dangerous when it blinds the human being to reality. Now she no longer ignored actions, because actions reveal truth more clearly than words ever can. This awareness made her stronger emotionally. Okay, she stopped begging for consistency, stopped forcing connections, stopped lowering her standards to avoid loneliness. And strangely, the more she respected herself, the more others respected her too. Why? Because the energy you carry teaches people how to treat you. A person who constantly tolerates disrespect silently invites more disrespect. But a person who values themselves naturally creates boundaries that others can feel. Self-respect changes posture, changes tone, changes decisions, changes relationships. It creates quiet strength within the human being. Again, she also realized that self-respect is deeply connected to discipline. When you respect yourself, you care for your health. Protect your mind from negativity. Avoid habits that destroy your future. Speak honestly. You act with integrity even when nobody is watching. Self-respect is not only about how others treat you. It is also about how you treat yourself daily. This understanding transformed her completely. Now she no longer feared being alone because she discovered something more important than attention, validation, or temporary connection. She discovered dignity, and a person with dignity no longer begs to be chosen. They choose themselves first with wisdom, calmness, and inner strength. That is when life truly begins to change. So remember this deeply. Being ignored did not destroy her. It revealed her strength. The silence taught her wisdom. The pain taught her discipline. The rejection taught her self-respect. And the loneliness taught her how to stand firmly within herself without depending on the approval of the world. This is the beautiful truth about life. Sometimes the moments that hurt the most become the moments that awaken the strongest version of who you are meant to become. Do not fear difficult seasons, do not fear being overlooked, and never fear walking alone for a while. Uidestidens rishan not asai. A seed grows in darkness before it reaches the light. A diamond is created under pressure, and the strongest souls are often shaped through silent battles nobody else can see. If people ignore your value, continue growing. If people doubt your path, continue walking. If life becomes difficult, continue strengthening your spirit, because one day you will look back and realize that everything you once cried about was preparing you for a higher level of peace, wisdom, and power. Never chase validation more than inner peace. Never sacrifice dignity for temporary attention. And never forget this. The human being who masters their own mind becomes truly unstoppable. May your pain become wisdom. May your silence become strength. May your discipline become freedom. And may your life become proof that suffering can transform the spirit into something powerful and unbreakable. Good luck on your journey. Protect your peace. Trust the process of growth. And continue becoming the strongest version of yourself every single day. Thank you.